relationships, psychology, and expert advice and interviews every Wednesday. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Ryan Answers podcast. I've been working on this for a while. I'm really excited to get it going. I am counselor and couples therapist Ryan, and on this show I'll be talking about dating, relationships, sex, marriage, psychology, all that kind of stuff. I take questions from you guys at ryananswers.com/contact. Every week I bring on a new expert, and that could be a psychologist, a dating and relationship expert, a counselor, people with really cool, unique advice and opinions. And this week I have on licensed mental health counselor Dan Bolton. He's going to talk about some really cool stuff like how to regain confidence and self-esteem, how to overcome the fear of rejection, and tons of other stuff. You can see the full show outline at ryananswers.com/EP1. That's the number one, not the word. There you'll find the full show outline as well as a free link or a link to a free download of Dan's ebook on dating. So definitely check that out. There'll also be some other links to cool stuff we've talked about during the show. So without further ado, let's jump right into it and see what Dan had to say. Today I have Dan Bolton with us. He's a licensed mental health counselor. He focuses on helping men improve their confidence, overcome their fears, to get more of what they want from their relationships and their life. Is that okay?
That's good.
Okay,
That's good.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm glad to have you. We spoke a little bit about a week ago, maybe even less than that, and I really enjoyed our talk. So for those of us who weren't there, everybody basically, can you share a little bit about your story and what got you into your profession?
Well, I had been studying psychotherapy since I was in college, but I didn't realize it till a few years ago, but my real passion in life was relationships. Relationships were something that I was always curious about and actually always really struggled with up until a few years ago. When I was in grad school, I met my first wife, and then we ended up getting married, and I thought, here is the love of my life. I will never have to deal with any of these problems with anxiety or insecurity again. And little did I know, that didn't solve all my problems. That sort of difficulty actually ended up affecting my marriage.
The anxiety, you mean, being around?
The anxiety or the idea that something outside of myself, someone outside of myself had a powerful effect on how I felt about myself. I thought I never had to deal with rejection again because you think you found the love of your life. No, there's no more rejection. Rejection is totally gone. But what I didn't realize, and what I know very distinctly now, is when you're in a relationship, you also face rejection.
Yeah, man.
And sometimes even more. At the time, when she divorced me, I thought it was the worst thing that was happening in my life. My biggest fear was this idea that I would be alone and single in my 30s. I was 31 at the time, and I was like, oh shit, that's my worst fear is coming true.
That's it. It's terrifying for a lot of people because you think, who's going to want to date me now, right?
Right. Because I didn't have myself handled. So at the time it was very scary, but what it turned out to be was an amazing opportunity. Put a lot of time into self-development, put a lot of time into understanding relationships and studying relationships and studying, different ways to approach dating and relationships, to the point I got a really strong handle on that. I started doing the things that I wanted to do in my life. Before I had been very serious, extremely career-oriented. I didn't allow myself a lot of fun because I thought I had to be a certain way in order to be accepted by my partner. So what I did was I started getting in touch with a lot of the things that I had lost touch with that made me happy as a kid, getting into the ocean. I started surfing.
Nice.
For the first time in my life. After growing up in Los Angeles, I had been in the ocean, I had boogie boarded, but I'd never allowed myself to believe that I could surf. And I just started really enjoying my life to the point where I was really happy with myself. Whether a woman said yes or no to me when I asked her out for a date didn't matter. It mattered if I was acting the way I wanted to act. I ended up getting on online dating, and something that had been very anxiety provoking for me before ended up being just a lot of fun. And then I met my wife, and
that's huge. And there's a lot of really good stuff in there. A few things that jumped out at me were, one, talking about how you used to have kind of like an external validation, like how you felt about yourself depended on other people rather than yourself.
Well, I think I became aware of it because, my ex-wife and I were fighting and arguing, and different problems were happening, or I would experience these different forms of rejection. It would hurt me really deeply, and I'd want to try to do things in order to prove I wasn't whatever she was pointing out that I was, or pointing out that I was doing. And the more I did that, the worse things got. I thought, all right, if I improve that she doesn't like, then my relationship will get better. And the more I did that, the worse things just ended up getting. And part of my self-development study was learning this concept intellectually, that seeking validation outside of yourself is just the wrong way to go about it. It's really about self-acceptance. And I understood this, studying psychology, this idea of self-acceptance as being important, but I'd never experienced it. And, I had gone through, so much emotional pain from my divorce. It's kind of like I got to this place, well, I just didn't care anymore. The worst rejection that I could have experienced happened to me. It just didn't matter anymore. I'm like,
fuck it,
I'm like, exactly. I'm like, there's nothing anyone could say to me now that's going to if I have a client coming to me saying, I'm really afraid of rejection, instead of having to go through this life dismantling process like I went through, I would get him to go out and practice getting rejection. Go out and practice getting rejection, essentially. Doing some desensitization, nice. Right? So I even have someone who is taking on this concept now. And this was actually on NPR just last week. There was something they call rejection therapy, where you go out and practice getting rejected. So
sounds like a blast, man.
Yeah, and it actually can be a lot of fun, because if you go at it from the perspective of of having fun and not caring whether someone accepts you or doesn't accept you, you can go out and have a lot of fun. You can make kind of a joke of it. Yeah. If you could do it in the context of friendships or being social, or if you're part of a group, you can come back and share your experiences with other people, because who hasn't faced rejection, really? I mean, part of why rejection feels so powerful emotionally is for the person who's afraid of it, they experience it alone, and they think they're the only one.
Good point.
Who goes through it. And so I think if you're able to go be part of an experience where you could share that with other people and laugh about it and say, oh my gosh, I can't even, believe what you did, or I can't believe what you said, or I can't believe how uptight that person is. Why would they be so uptight that they couldn't even...
I got a question for you though. See, you're preaching to the choir. I'm obviously, given our similar backgrounds, I'm sold on that concept, but if somebody came up and they're talking about, hey, I need some help with my self-esteem, I'm petrified of what people think of me, and you go, oh cool, there's this great thing called rejection therapy, and they're like, not a chance, buddy, I'm out of here. How do you get people to take that first step and overcome that first hurdle so that they can see that, hey, it's not so bad? And obviously the ball gets rolling and they're fine, but what about that first step?
I think in that sort of situation, the first step wouldn't be just throwing them out into the pool of sharks. I think you'd probably do some more talking, them getting comfortable, going over some different ways they think.
Looking at their associations with rejection kind of thing?
At their associations with rejection, looking at how they think about rejection, trying to help them think a little differently, or reframe how they think. If they're catastrophizing, then you kind of help them identify that as...
Can you explain that briefly for people who aren't familiar with reframing and catastrophizing?
Right. So catastrophizing is a form of thought distortion, and sometimes when we have a thought distortion, it's a way we amplify, what we think an outcome of a situation is going to be, for example. So with rejection, someone might have the idea, like, if I ask this person out and she says no, then she's never going to talk to me again, or she's going to think I'm just a douchebag, or she's going to think I'm a creep, or she's going to think that I'm an idiot.
Some bullshit about you, and the effects of that, like how will that affect that guy? So you're asking him, okay, play this out in your head, man. What's going to happen?
Right. And I think another big one that I didn't point out was everyone's going to look at me and see that I got rejection and think that I'm a fool.
Huge.
And most people are not concerned enough with other people outside of themselves to notice something like that. Like no one's going to end up pointing their finger at you and saying, haha, you're the one, look at that guy getting rejected over there.
And then I do it, and then a whole crowd of people just comes up, but no, that's great, man. That's awesome advice. So just to recap quickly on that segment, so if you're afraid of rejection, 1, think about what it means to you to be rejected. Think about the kind of outcomes you're predicting and what that'll happen and what that means to you. And then once you're okay with working yourself up, go out and step outside your comfort zone a little bit. And over time, you become desensitized. Did I pretty much get the process?
Yep. And I would also try to, once they identify what their feared, this amplified outcome is going to be, part of that would be, well, is that really going to happen? Is it 100% true that would happen? And try to all the examples where there's an exception to what their feared outcome is. And at that point, then you might practice on really safe kind of rejections. In Boston, people tend to be kind of salty and like what they want. Yeah. And once you get talking to people in Boston, they're very friendly. But if they don't know you and you're passing by on the street, there's not a lot of friendly smiles and highs and greetings. So, one guy who was at that point you're talking about, I say, just go on the street and say hi to everybody as you walk by. And you'll experience all these small rejections. He's like, well, what's the point of that? Because no one's going to say hi back. I'm like, that's the point. Yeah. No one in Boston is going to say hi back. That's like a good, simple introductory practice to getting small rejections. And then you come back and talk about that. Maybe the next step is, trying to talk to the barista at Starbucks and when you're getting your coffee and having the experience of it not turning out as other kind of safe, a little safe contained environment where someone who has that much anxiety can get a little of experience having some safe rejections.
Without
and then you move
too
up.
Far. Yeah, I get you. All right, so another thing that you mentioned was that while you were in your first relationship, or your first marriage rather, you lost touch with the things that made you happy. And to me, that stresses the importance of keeping yourself and your own interests and maintaining your own identity and all that throughout a relationship. What can you tell guys about how to do that and how to not let yourself get sucked in and stop hanging out with your buddies, stop doing all the stuff that you love to do that makes you feel alive?
I think it's a really difficult thing to keep track of. I think the most important thing to remember is that for the longevity of a relationship, you got to have balance. You have to have balance between the intimacy you have with your partner and intimacy you have with yourself. I think a lot of people get caught up in, I need to work really hard to keep this relationship strong. And it ends up being like, I'm going to put all my effort into meeting all of the needs and demands of my partner. But I think every couple I've ever worked with and every person I talk to, because of my experience, I say you also got to really keep in touch with yourself. And each person has to go out and do the things that make them happy. Each person has to go out and do the things and develop themselves individually, because a really healthy relationship is two people who are whole, who come together to supplement each other, not complement each other. This Jerry Maguire, I often quote Jerry Maguire in my blog because they have that one line where Tom Cruise goes, "You complete me," like when he finally realizes.
As if she fills a void in him, or... Right.
And so a lot of people, especially when you're not in a relationship, think this is going to, I need a relationship to be happy. Yeah, and this whole idea of you complete me is very dangerous because it's more of like the relationships that really last are the people who are happy in their own lives outside of a relationship. They're whole people and they come together and they supplement each other's life and challenge each other to grow and develop for the rest of their life. And those I've found are really healthy relationships and the ones that really last.
Nice. So what about when you come up against kind of a wall where you're trying to maintain your own individuality, you're trying to do the stuff you want to do. Say you want to go out surfing, for example. Say I'm in Boston and I want to go out surfing, and the person I'm with is like, no way, why don't you ever spend time with me? Or you get in that kind of dynamic. What do you do in that situation?
Well, I think that if you're in a relationship and you haven't done this, shifting to starting to do this can be difficult, especially if the expectations are set a different way. If you're about to get into a relationship, I think it's really important to communicate all of this to your partner and say, all right, well, this is how I want to live my life. This is what I think is really important for our relationship for the long term. This is how I think we're going to keep our relationship healthy. And getting on the same page with somebody is the best formula. You don't hit those snags down the road with your partner.
Okay, so preemptively handle it by setting clear expectations at the start of the relationship or early on. Okay, so say that you didn't do that and things are going a little bit rocky. I mean, I'm sure there's some level of situation by situation basis, but do you have any general advice for people who maybe they want to switch things up a bit? How do you do that without causing kind of a rift or any kind of damage to the relationship itself?
I think it's important how you frame the communication. If you could frame it in terms of like, the bad thing to do would be like, you're holding me back. I want to do all these things. Stop making my life miserable.
So blaming your partner.
No blaming.
Okay, good. Rule number one, no blaming.
Not effective. And really try to make it collaborative with your partner. If you can make it a collaborative discussion instead of a one-sided discussion like, I think this is the best, I think this is going to work, we need to do this. That's another ineffective communication.
But amazing insight. Yeah, you got to keep it as a team. So basically, rule number one, don't blame, don't put the onus on them that they're the source of everything that's wrong. And two, stay on the same team and make it a, hey, you know what, maybe things are a bit rocky, but I would love for us to make some changes that would help both of us and help us both grow.
Yeah, and avoid resent down the road.
Yeah.
If we stay on this pattern where we're just giving everything of ourselves to each other for the sake of the other person and not doing anything for ourselves and not keeping track with our own dreams in life or with things that make us individually happy, and also be able to take that joy we experience in those situations and bring that energy back to our relationship. Because if we're both able to be our best selves, this is what brought us together in the first place. This is taking it back to the roots. This is what really made our relationship strong from the beginning, and we could do that again.
Nice. That's another thing I hear a lot is you have to fall in love many times with the same person. And it's never really specified. I love that you made that kind of tangible and clear that, hey, when there's stuff going wrong, you got to make some changes. And I think a lot of people just let that go. And when it comes time to make changes, they don't understand, or maybe they don't believe it's possible, or maybe they just lack the self-awareness and they end up separating. And one thing we talked about on that note was divorce and how a lot of people think that's it, your life is over when you're divorced, especially if you have kids with your former partner. And that's another thing I think you had great opinions on. I would love for you to share with everybody how you rebounded and how your divorce actually sparked what seems to be the renaissance of your life.
Yeah, I think along this line of you get to a point where you're not feeling happy in your life, and it's very easy to blame it on your partner. But if you're not happy with your life, likely you're making choices that is leading you to be unhappy, and it's not really about your partner. I know we were talking the other day about the love of your life marriage scripts and how they undermine relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think these are real big culprits in terms of what we're talking about now. So if you have this idea, my partner is the love of my life, so they should be doing this and they should be doing that, or I should be feeling this way with this person, but I'm not. I mean, this is what I hear a lot, and especially from guys coming in and saying, my wife is saying she's not feeling happy and she's thinking about divorce. Well, a lot of that feeling of unhappiness is not doing the things that are driving you, not doing the things that make you happy, not doing the things that tap into your passion of life. And because you have this marriage script of the love of my life, you think I should be feeling this explosive chemistry, but I'm just not anymore. But maybe it's because you're not doing the things in your own life that make you happy.
Yeah, maybe you should start taking care of yourself a little bit before you go pinning it all on somebody else.
Yeah,
If
and
only we could just say that right out. I mean, it's a little harsh, but it's a lot of the times it's the truth.
yeah, I mean, I think it is the truth, and you wouldn't want to necessarily say it that way
No.
if that's what your wife comes and tells you. But I think it's a good perspective for people to take away when they're doing their own kind of individual work or self-development. That happiness is self-contained. Nobody is responsible for your own happiness.
Great quote. I like that.
You have to be responsible for your own happiness, and you want to do things where you feel happy, you feel passionate about life, and you're bringing that energy back into your relationship. You have to try to strive to be your best self. I'm a very big believer in self-actualization, that whole hierarchy of needs from Abraham Maslow. I
I was
love
gonna
it.
say good old Maslow, man. Guy's a
Maslow
legend.
is great.
What a beauty.
And at the top of the hierarchy, the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. Somewhere in the middle is self-esteem and love.
I'll throw an image up when we edit it all so people can see.
So a lot of people get stuck in self-esteem and love. They have a need of self-esteem and love they feel is not being met. And that's kind of in the middle that's where most people get stuck, in the middle of that hierarchy. But to really achieve and meet your own needs, you need to be hitting all of these different levels of the hierarchy, and self-actualization is the top one. So if you're not striving to do the things you want to do with your life, eventually you're going to feel unhappy. And if you're stuck in the middle at self-esteem and love and relationships, you're going to depend on that from your partner, and that dependence can really leach the energy from a relationship. But if you decide to strive towards the things you want to do in life, you're going to feel happy even when things aren't great in your relationship. And who can really meet everyone
through, really? Like when things are rough, that internal happiness, that's what, in part at least, helps people get through that, right?
Absolutely, because if you're stuck believing your partner has to meet your needs, and how could any other person meet all of your emotional needs? Or, like even when you're a baby, your mother can't meet all of your needs. I mean, babies cry, babies get frustrated. It's part of development. And it kind of throws the child into the next stage of development when they realize that there are needs they're having that aren't being able to be met by their mother, their family.
They have to grow a bit, right?
Yeah, they have to grow a bit. So if you're able to meet your own needs and you're striving towards self-actualization, even if things aren't great in your relationship, you're still going to be happy and emotionally stable, and that will help you not focus everything on your needs not being met in your relationship. Because if your focus is only on your unhappiness in your relationship and you can't see anything else, the big picture to you is going to just be bleak and unhappy.
Yeah, excellent point.
Very hard to survive through that if that's where all your focus is.
One interesting implication of what you just said, I wanted to kind of pull out as a more apparent quote, was that if your needs aren't being met by somebody is something that forces you into growth, then essentially when your needs aren't being met in your relationship, instead of blaming that person, you're saying reflect on yourself and think of ways you can grow to meet that need, and then you can elevate both of you potentially. And that's one way that people could feed off of each other and grow instead of going into like a negative codependency spiral or something.
Yes, I think that's definitely one angle to take. And I don't want to tell people, like, if your needs aren't being met, just totally ignore it.
Just
put the
whatever.
blind to fly forward. But you want to communicate with your partner about your needs, and you want your needs to be important, but they shouldn't be the end-all be-all.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying, because I could see how some people would have been like, oh, so if my partner's not doing shit, I can just work on myself, and be...
Right.
Okay.
Or if you're in like a really bad or abusive relationship and you're just like, all right, I guess I'll just focus and keep it. attacked
Yeah, keep beating me
verbally
down.
and
It's
emotionally.
okay. It's an opportunity for me to grow. Great advice from the therapist. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, man. So that's great. We kind of got derailed there. I want to hop back on the divorce thing. If you
Okay.
have direct tips, say somebody's just gotten divorced, they're feeling the lowest of lows. They think their life is over. They don't know how they feel undateable maybe. What would you tell somebody in that situation? What advice would you give them on how to kind of rise from the ashes and reinvent themselves and bounce back from something like that?
Well, I think anyone who has just gone through divorce is probably going to come out of a situation where they're getting somewhat verbally or
Yeah.
been given this idea that they're not a good husband, they're not a good partner, and it's going to be very normal that you feel not good enough. It's going to be very normal that you feel not dateable. I think this is going to be part of the process of recovering from a divorce. So number one, that to feel less about yourself, to feel like this sense of low self-esteem is a normal part of that process. So I like men to understand that first, because a lot of times they'll experience that and equate it to reality. Going back to the thought distortion, this could very easily turn into a thought distortion where you really believe that you're not dateable instead of identifying it as, this is part of my process. I will get past this. I will get better. So that would be the first point. Second point, I'd say start getting out and doing the things that you want to do. What are the things that you wanted to do while you were married or in a relationship that you didn't do? Well, go out and start doing those things, because now you got time. You got no one putting demands on you not to do that anymore, if that was the case.
Which often is, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's so much that gets absorbed into trying to fix the relationship, trying to meet demands to make the relationship better, getting absorbed in a lot of negative feelings, being exhausted from them, and not getting out and doing the things that you want to do.
Nice. So to recap briefly and then touch on something else, the first thing, the negative stuff you're feeling is normal. Don't feel like you're weird or that you're strange or that you're weak or anything really, because you're feeling some bad stuff. Divorce is an insane thing to go through, and it's normal for it to affect you. In fact, I would say it would be strange if you're just like, oh, got divorced, my life's awesome, you know?
Yeah.
And then second thing, use it as an opportunity. Reconnect with yourself, do the things you've wanted to do, and focus on building around that. Find your own sources of happiness and use those to kind of fill the holes left by the damage that happened.
Absolutely, especially if it's something new, especially if it's something that you've never done before. Try on different hats, try on different things, do new and different things. Maybe you hadn't even thought that you ever wanted to do this. So just try different things, go out and just experience yourself in different ways. And it's a way to really kind of connect with sides of yourself that maybe you didn't know were there before.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a cool thing. And there's so many directions we could go. I'm sure we could do this for forever, but you brought up one thing that said, you were like, reality is not objective, is basically what I took from it, in that you can succumb and believe the negative thoughts you have accurately represent what's going on in the real world, and that everybody is going to see that. Can you explain a little bit more about that phenomenon and how you overcome it?
Yeah, I think, well, in terms of how we think, our subjective reality, we can create our own subjective realities, and I think it's important to remember that. I am undateable. No one is ever going to love me again. There are also people who believe I am the most dateable and everyone loves me. So there's a choice about how you think about it. And I think if you get really caught, understanding that this is a normal process would help you identify it and get some distance from that kind of thinking. So the more believable that thought is, the more you're going to sabotage yourself from going out and trying to meet new people. The more you're not going to take chances. You're not going to take risks. You're not going to even try to date somebody. You're not going to ask the woman out that you're interested in. But I think when that belief is really entrenched, one thing to do, which I did when I first started dabbling with the idea of dating, I went on I went on one of these online dating websites that had no women in my area. There was absolutely no chance for me to meet any woman physically unless I bought a plane ticket, a very expensive plane ticket to some part of the world. And so I started interacting with women online, and I got to experience women being into me and being attracted to me. It helped me chip away at this belief that maybe I'll never meet somebody again, or maybe
That's
I'm
key.
not
You
dateable.
chip away. It doesn't go away like that. It's a process.
Yeah, absolutely. And so once I did that for a couple of months, I really built my confidence a lot. And then a few months later, I was on, the real online dating sites and messaging people I was really meeting and really going on dates. And that's when I met my wife, and
Awesome.
things really just launched from there. So it's a process. There's no magic pill that's going to just take all that, those negative feelings away. But I think identifying it as something that's a normal part of the process, that's not, concrete, and do some work to chip away and get a different experience.
Yeah, I've always heard a good comparison that I've been told is that there's no absolute beliefs, and you should only have degrees of certainty, so that even the most concrete belief you have is maybe 99%. So there's always that little room to fit a sliver in and kind of pry that belief away if in the future you find that it's negative or destructive or wrong. So one thing you were talking about was online dating, and I know you put out an ebook on that. It's free on danbolton.com. I recommend everybody check that out. I read it recently. I really enjoyed it. You had a lot of really unique tips in there and real messages too, like actual word for word things that have been sent and why they work or don't. And you also had something really interesting too in regards to profile descriptions and how to increase your odds and get those responses flooding in. Could you share that with everybody? Because it's not something I've ever heard before.
Yeah, I think feedback I get from a lot of men is they don't want to say anything that's going to get them rejected or get a woman not to like them. And that's a huge mistake. So they ended up writing profiles that are very neutral, or they want to leave room to be that person that the woman's going to like. But what a woman really wants is to know who you are, especially if she's meeting you online and she doesn't know you from Adam. And so if you're very wishy-washy about what you write and she's reading this and she doesn't get a strong idea of who you are, she's going to pass you up. She's going to go to the next person because it's going to sound like every other profile.
Yeah.
And part of what you want to do online in dating is stand out from everybody else, but you also want to be clear with who you are, because the more a woman gets a sense of who you are, the more likely she's going to go out with you, because a woman wants to make an informed choice about who she's going out with.
She doesn't want to. Yeah, absolutely.
She doesn't want to learn. She doesn't want to get blindsided later. She wants to know very strongly who is this person, because I think women are used to men being dishonest to try to get in their pants, really, right? And so they're always trying, hey, men do that. But it's a huge mistake because it puts women in the defensive.
You grow out of it too. Hopefully.
You grow out of it. Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully you grow out of it. It's definitely something men do when they're younger.
Yeah.
So women are constantly questioning, is this guy who he really says he is what he's saying to me true? So if you're very clear, even if you take the risk of alienating somebody, she's going to say, I understand who this guy is and I'm interested, or I understand who this guy is and I'm going to move on. And I think that's good, because why you want to waste time with somebody who eventually is going to find out who you are and is going to not be interested.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason I did that when I was like 18, 19, because I was too afraid of showing myself and showing who I was, I would not necessarily lie to get in their pants about my interests with them, but I would lie about who I was, because I wasn't really comfortable with it. And you want to discover what it is about you that makes people attracted to you, right?
And not only what makes people attracted to you, but what is it about you that is really you, and what is it about you that you really love, and putting that forward, so women can make an informed choice about whether they're interested in learning more about you or they're not. And I think what I find is that it starts to get more responses. Men will get more responses to the messages they write instead of hearing crickets. I know a lot of men complain, like, why am I not getting any responses? I was working with somebody And for a long time, we were talking about like why he kept asking, why am I not getting any responses? Why am I not getting any responses? And eventually I said, well, let me read your profile. And then his profile, was very neutral. And then he would even say stuff like, well, I'm interested in this, but you probably aren't very interested in that. So I don't know. Literally, he said that. I'm
so
like,
self-defeating off the bat, yeah.
But I'm like, but you love that. So why would you write out explicitly, you assume she wouldn't love what you love?
Yeah,
Why don't you just say, I love that?
Telling them some negative kind of deep down stuff in there that assuming, oh, I'm not likable. People aren't going to like the stuff I like. You probably won't like it, but hey, I'm just something, very, very cautious and everything.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, that's an extreme example.
yeah, but
It's a more extreme
happens,
example.
man. It happens.
But I asked him, I'm like, is that something that you love? And he's like, yes. I'm like, well, just say you love it and leave it at that.
Be unapologetic, basically.
Yeah, be unapologetic about who you are. Be unapologetic about what you like.
All right.
He took that out. He started getting more responses. So.
That's awesome. And to end on the online dating thing, you mentioned put things in your profile that explain or describe who you really are. How do you go about doing that? Because that's something, be yourself or be who you really are. I hear that a lot, but not very many people ever go into how do you know that? How do you find that out?
I mean, I think that's part of the self-development work. I mean, I think if you're not clear about some of those things, I think that would be a good indicator that you need to do some more work on yourself, spend some more time with yourself, try out some different things, and try on some different hats in life, and really get a stronger sense of who you are.
So put on the things, put on your profile, the things that really resonate with you, and to find those things, you have to go out and experience. So if you don't have a sense of it, go out, try a bunch of stuff, figure out what you really like, and then kind of go from there. Is that a decent summary?
That's a decent summary, okay. I think. And it can be very subtle. Like when I got my profile to it's like fever pitch, when it was like really awesome and I was getting a lot of responses, I put stuff in there like, sometimes I'll get really into like cheesy romantic songs, and there's a lot of cheesy romantic songs I don't like. But when I was in high school, there was and there was a girl I was dating. Our song was John Cicada, Just Another Day Without You. And it's such a catchy song. Even now, I could break out in song and just start singing this John Cicada song, right? And so I kept putting on this profile like little allusions to John Cicada. Like I could just randomly break out in singing John Cicada, and why is John Cicada not currently on tour, and all of these kind of things. And I just kind of kept hitting these little things that were very subtle parts of my experience growing up, and little subtle indications of who I really was. And it really made women curious, and because it was very authentic. For a lot of guys, it would seem risky to say you like John Cicada, or you like these cheesy
because they think
romance
it was lame
songs.
Or something.
Because they'd think it was lame. But if you really own it and just say, damn, I love John Cicada. I love that one-hit wonder that guy was.
Yeah, it's like how the cool people can say the most ridiculous or embarrassing things, and everybody loves them for it because they own it and they're comfortable with who they are.
Yeah, and I think that's an example. So it doesn't have to be this mind-blowing, earth-shattering thing that you think it has to be to impress other people. It just has to be true. It has to be authentic. Who the hell remembers John Cicada? Not very many people, but the people that do. I don't even know
who John Cicada is. So
there you go.
Yeah, exactly. If I was a girl reading your profile, I might pass. But the thing is, that'd probably be a good thing, because you don't want somebody who doesn't know or doesn't care about John Cicada or all these little things. You want somebody who connects with you, right?
You want someone who connects with you, and if she doesn't know who John Cicada is and you mention it like 3 times in this very enthusiastic way, she's going to get curious and ask, who the hell is John Cicada? So it's a great icebreaker, and then for the people who do know who John Cicada is, they laugh because they're like, oh my gosh, I remember that song from 1993 or whatever it was, So
to recap the online dating thing, 1, don't be afraid to potentially alienate some people to get the people who are a better match. If you're just average, everybody's going to pass on you. to put in the things that really reflect who you are. If you don't know those things, or even if you do, you can always find out more about yourself by experimenting. Try different things, try taking guitar lessons, try surfing, try hanging out with new people, or whatever else to find out who you are. And 3, don't be afraid to be a little vulnerable. Show some maybe subtle or potentially like embarrassing things, because that's what allows people to connect, right? If you have this filter up, people can't get through that.
Right. And don't apologize for it, because everyone has those. Everyone has those.
Anything else you want to add here before we wrap up?
The one other thing I was thinking, I lost it. That's good.
I hate that, man. You got something great and you're like, damn it.
Oh, well.
Well, that's great, man. I think we got tons of material. It was a pleasure having you on. I'm really happy that we just happened to meet through Twitter. That's really cool. So people can find you at danbolton.com, and you're helping people with their dating life. You're seeing couples. You're helping men with confidence and self-esteem. You got your free ebook out. You're doing all kinds of stuff over there. So if you liked our talk today, definitely go check it out. And if nothing else, download his ebook, because there are some really, really useful tips in there. If you want the show notes, I'll have a link up here at the bottom where you can get those. That just summarizes what we talked about, gives you some key takeaways, and also includes useful links. We'll be doing a podcast every Wednesday with more great guests like Dan. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Truly a pleasure.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad we connected.